Welcome, everybody. Great to see everybody. Appreciate you, those of you that were here last week for coming back, and those of you that didn't make it last week for being here. We'll get a chance to say hello to each of you. I'm Randy Salem, part of Business Climate Leaders, and my cohort over there, Mark Menzer. I'm on the West Coast, outside of San Francisco, south of San Francisco in Los Altos, and Mark on the East Coast. So today, you got it, Mark?
Busy taking attendance. Yeah, okay. Today, as you were saying, is our second of our four sessions. And today we're going to get more into the how-tos to engage companies and what resources we have available to work with them. And we're going to establish teams so that you can work both individually, but also with support of a team. So, and then we have 2 more weeks after this as well. So if you, next slide. And here's our agenda today. We're going to talk about just some basic principles. Anybody who's new today, introduce themselves. I don't have to go through all this, but you can see we're also going to start talking about how do we approach them. What are the salient points we want to make when we talk to our targets. And then, as I said, how to do it. We'll divide into teams and a couple of other things that talk about before we leave.
All right, thanks, Mark. Just want to kind of talk to, I was just thinking about, wanted to kind of set an overall, I guess, tone in terms of how we work together and how we work within Citizens Climate Lobby and business climate leaders. And just to start to say that we're in this together. We really look at going, we can, of course, we'll maybe doing some things on our own, but really here to be supportive as a team. And when you go into meetings, it will be going with your fellow interns, as well as either one of us, or it could be somebody else from BCL specific to an industry. So you never have to feel like, although on one hand, we want you to kind of step in, you're outside your comfort zone and try new things and stretch yourself. At the same time, we're here to support and be there and be part of the process with you. And it's really learning as we go. Mark and I, we have some experience that we bring to this, but we're learning and how to, we don't have all the answers, and we're learning as we go and expect you guys to as well. So looking for kind of creative ways to how do we engage companies, open to your ideas and insights, and we'll learn as we go through that. There's definitely momentum that's happening. You guys have probably felt over the last couple of years and really starting to see that in terms of climate being obviously with the new administration that's there, but companies are starting to more and more get engaged and speak out more. So that's something we're kind of, I'm happy to say we've been a part of in a small way to start moving that forward and educating companies and getting them moving toward that. And it's nice to step into that flow. And at the same time, it takes a long, it can take time. Sometimes you'll get a company and they're ready to go, but in most cases, it's a kind of a longer term process of getting connected with them and kind of seeing where they're at and what they're willing to kind of step into on climate. And of course, if you're not sure of things, just ask. We try to, and we want to create an environment where you feel really safe and open to discussing things. And you can either do that in the group or you can email us and we can talk outside of that as well. So just want to open the floor to whoever wasn't here last week when we did introductions. If you would just say your name and what school you go to, what you're majoring in, where you're actually spending your time this summer, and kind of what brought you into climate. Obviously, we all know the big issue, but in terms of what personally speaks to you around climate, why it's brought you here. So if anybody wants to jump in that didn't get a chance last week, please do.
I guess I can go really quick. Hello, everyone. I'm Griffin. I'm at Emory University down in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm spending my time this summer back home in Denver, Colorado. I'm majoring in behavioral economics and the climate stuff. I guess just being a person, I care about climate because That's kind of important. But then additionally, I've been fortunate enough to live in or next to a nature preserve for much of my life, and being able to see those impacts firsthand kind of empowered me to try and see what I could do. So here I am.
Thanks, Griffin. Awesome to have you. This morning I signed up and sat through a class by Kate Rayworth. You know her, Donut Economics. If you haven't run across Donut Economics yet, all right, well, I'll send it around. Awesome stuff. It's really about what's the new vision for economics, and how do we both not exceed our planetary boundaries, but also how do we help keep people from slipping in the hole of not enough food, not enough education, not enough rights, etc. So really beautiful stuff. She's at Oxford doing cool stuff. So thanks, Griffin. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think the only other one that's Jill. I think you're new and you weren't with us last week, so why don't you go ahead?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jill, and I go to Clark University, which is in Massachusetts. But I go to, I'm currently in Maine right now, Southern Maine. I major in environmental policy and international development. I'm actually an intern at CCL, one of the climate advocacy interns, but I've been interested in business and climate. I actually am also an intern at Change the Chamber. So there's a lot of reaching out to companies that are part of the Chamber of Commerce. So this is very up my alley. But I've always been interested in climate activism, and what really drew me in is just wanting to do something meaningful and fulfilling in my life. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. That's great. Great to have you. Are you with CCL? Are you a regional fellow, kind of working on a specific region or a state, or?
No, I'm the title is just climate advocacy intern, so I'm not a fellow.
Okay, great. That's great. And right before I was on here, I was sending my tweets for Change the Chamber. So I love what they're doing.
Awesome.
And Rose Bajan, our last intern from Michigan State, was part of Change the Chamber as well. So I don't know if you know her. So
I don't think so, but that's awesome.
All right, great. Is my sound coming through okay? Okay, I heard a little bit of echoing.
Yeah, there is a little echoing, so if just everybody can mute, please, when you're not speaking.
All right, so just want to make sure, I think you guys have hopefully all seen this, Business Climate Resources, BCL Resources. And I'm just pointing it out now because most of what we're talking about today is kind of in here in different ways. This is kind of our main suitcase of information. We're going to start to kind of dig into this work here in terms of how to engage companies. We'll be talking about making contact with them here today. But you'll also see there's a lot of really good information resources, both on, I'll go back here, both on specific industries, background and some of the work that we're doing, as well as a lot of good supporting resources, kind of looking at, this is a really excellent presentation, and looking at an overview of business engagement on climate and carbon pricing, lots of background on the specific carbon fee and dividend and et cetera. So just to know that resource is there for you. Okay. Mark.
Thank you. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how to engage with our companies and organizations, and how to position ourselves and the Energy Innovation Act. So one thing to keep in mind is that the first thing is that there's just a moral imperative to act on climate, and the people that you're talking to probably care also. They're mothers and fathers and grandparents, and they're reading the same kinds of things that we're reading, and they know that there's a reason to act. But it really comes down in their decision to dollars and cents. We have to make a business case, and that's one of the things when you look at our resources, you'll see a number of things that talk about business cases. And we may have already written up a business case for the type of company you want to engage with, but more likely, because there are so many different kinds of companies, you're going to have to think up that business case yourself. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. And the other thing is, we always like to tell people that something's going to happen. There is going to be a climate policy. I know right now it looks ugly in Washington, but at some point they're going to sit down and broker this out. And if you want a policy that makes sense and makes sense for your business, then you've got to be, part of the action. You've got to have a seat at the table. So there is no sitting on the sidelines. So let's talk a little bit about the engagement strategy. And, first of all, I know some of you have already listed on the Google sheet what companies you want to go after. The rest of you, I hope, will do so in the next day or two. So what kind of companies should you be looking at? Well, for one thing, easy targets, you might say, are companies that have already had a public position on the environment. And many of them do that on their websites. They'll have an environmental statement. A larger company would actually file a sustainability report, and you can look at that and you can just see in their own words what they plan to do. And so there, you've got somebody who's should be a receptive audience to what we've got to say. Companies that appeal to a younger audience, clothes or apps or whatever, often are a lot more progressive thinking about the future. Companies that aren't too energy intensive, won't have a downside to a carbon tax. So those are companies we should be thinking about. And companies, that are thinking about the future, that are really positioning themselves for the future and realize they're going to have new opportunities, are also the kinds of companies that we want to be talking to. And so, last week and today, Randy and I have been doing a lot of the talking, but I'd like to make this a little bit more interactive. Let's kind of sit back and think about, if we were going to talk to some of these companies, how would we position it? If we're trying to position the Energy Innovation Act to talk to a local restaurant or a local market, what are some of the concerns that they might have about climate change and that they're already seeing maybe in their business about climate change, and how does what we're proposing help them? So let's start, with a local restaurant or market. Any thoughts on what kind of problems might a local restaurant, local market already be seeing in their day-to-day business that they could attribute to climate change? Just speak up, unmute and speak.
I would think maybe their supply chain might be affected by climate change if they're having trouble sourcing certain products or food. And then, of course, with a carbon price, that would also affect possibly the price of food that they're getting.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's a great one. So, they probably already have had, because of wildfires or floods or something, some disruption in their food supply chain. That's only going to get worse. And I'm sure, there's great concern about that and planning about that. So you're right. So then what we're proposing, what does that do? How does that help them? Well,
I was
certainly,
also,
yeah. Mhm.
oh,
Oh, I
sorry.
have hand.
No, please go ahead.
I also, on more of the business side, I know a lot of local farmers markets in Southern California, they run on a purely kind of seasonal basis during the summer where there's higher demand. And if climate change makes it such that kind of the window for crops to grow moves earlier and earlier in the spring or later and later in the fall, then you're probably not going to, there's going to be maybe wasted crops, or just it's not going to match up with how people demand goods.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, by the way, I can only see a few of you at a time on my screen, so don't raise your hand because I can't see it. Just unmute and speak
If
up.
they raise their hand, if they use the hand thing, they'll pop up to the top.
Oh, it will. Oh, okay. Very good.
Mhm.
All right.
Raise their
So-
virtual hand.
Right, exactly. Okay, so that's right. So there's a good example. Randy, if you want to just scroll down here, concern, less warming, and a little effort on their part can have a big impact. Very good. So let's talk about brewers, because we've been going after the brewers with one of our declarations. Again, what kind of concerns would a a brewer, either a mass brewer or a local brewery, have?
You had mentioned this in the last meeting that clean water sources are their main concern. So that
Mhm.
would be the strongest angle to approach it with.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I will tell you that we have a short video. We're not going to show it today on breweries. Hops turned out to be a very sensitive crop that is very affected by climate change. So availability of hops, which is important in making beer, is one. And again, Randy, if you want to just scroll down, we've
And-
done
and it-
uh, we've done an analysis of both the beer and the wine industry, and it shows how little, a penny or two per bottle, this tax will have, even after 10 years of escalation. So, they're concerned about costs, but we tell them, there really is minor impact upon your cost. And then, of course, we always talk to them about the dividend side of things. It's not just the tax, it's the dividend. And people will have more money for going to the restaurant or for beer. So that's another thing that we want to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I think on that front, just to say, there's two sides to the dividend. One is there's companies who are concerned about social justice issues and wanting to make sure that, those most affected are going to be taken care of. And in terms of if you're giving out the dividend to, in the case of our policy, the policy we support, then it does, kind of, I think 95% of the lower two income tiers end up better off, and kind of 70 or 75% of people overall end up better off. And it's really people's choice. Not totally, but people can choose to have more efficient cars. Obviously, there's upfront costs and stuff, but people can hopefully be able to make, over the long term, more choices to use less. So, and then so there's the just social justice side, and then there's also just the side of pumping that money back in the economy. People, if you look at the research, which we can show you, people will put, when they have more money in their pocket, what did they do during COVID? They spent a lot of money on alcohol, but also healthcare and other consumables, food.
Good. Yeah. So another group that we've been going after, and hopefully you'll get to talk to one in your area, is a solar energy installer. How would we approach them? What's in it for them? Somebody who hasn't spoken up yet.
Possibly the reduction of greenhouse gases.
Well, that's right. Yeah, this will carbon fee and dividend will lead to lower greenhouse gases, right? Which the installer is all about. But in addition, so what in dollars and cents? What difference does this make?
Their
make
business
for them?
would grow, correct? If the fossil fuel industry, if we're going to move away from that, then all renewable energy businesses will become bigger and more successful, hopefully, if we transition.
Yep, that's right.
I also wanted to say that it would look good for their customers because you could assume if someone's getting solar power installed that they already care about the environment. So from a customer's point of view, that's like something good for a company to be doing or supporting.
Right. Yep. I'll tell you, I have a little recent history with this because we were looking at putting solar on our house. We decided not to do it now because my electric costs here are already so low that the payback wasn't good. But with this fee, that's going to drive up fossil fuel costs. My utility is very fossil fuel driven, and my electric costs are going to go up. It's going to make a complete difference in the economics of putting up solar on my house and for many other businesses as well. And I think when we see the correct answer here, Randy, in a moment, not that these are the correct answers, there's many reasons. We're just putting one down. Higher fossil fuel cost is a faster return on investment for customers. So very good. Thank you all. Thank you all for that. And just one final one. We actually had some good relationships with the ski industry. And so why would the ski industry be concerned about climate change, and how is this going to help them?
Climate change would make snow melt, so then their businesses would suffer because they wouldn't have as much snow for as long of a time period in the season.
Yep, and they're already seeing that. Yeah. Cooper, was that what you're going to say, or did you have something else? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. So, you're right, and it turns out that this has already affected them. It's infected their insurance costs, because a lot of them are insured against this kind of damage, and the cost of doing artificial snow apparently is very expensive, and so they've been trying to make up for the lack of snow with artificial snow, and it's really hit them already. And furthermore, this is not a reason for them, but a reason for us to want to talk to them is that they tend to be in rural districts of the country, of course. They tend to have more conservative representatives in Congress, a group that's hard to reach, conservative members of Congress. So having the ski areas and other outdoor activities like that on our side is very valuable politically. So good for you. Good. Randy, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I was just thinking the other thing I would say too, for the industries that are really already affected by climate change, the ski industry is one of them. Any agricultural industry is already seeing some impacts. Wine industry, is that they're already paying higher costs for things. They're already paying higher, either insurance costs, or they're having to, because of droughts and wildfires, having issues. That having a federal policy instead of just the individual companies and their industry paying the costs, that having a federal policy, what's really appealing is it's going to make everybody pay, and everybody pay based on how much they're using and how much they're contributing to the issue, right? So I think that's a really powerful thing, because it's easy for a company to say, well, I don't want to pay a tax, and nobody wants to pay more tax, right? I think that's so it's like, why would I want to pay more for something, even if as our study shows, it would only be a couple cents for a bottle of beer extra, but they're paying a couple of cents for that tax. They're paying a couple extra cents for this, a couple extra cents for that. It adds up to their bottom line. But if there's already what doesn't get discussed is what's the cost if we don't do anything. What are going to be the additional costs in terms of my supply chains and getting commodities, things like that. And if instead of me as an individual business, if everybody economy wide can be paying and shifting, then that is the most efficient and effective. And carbon pricing, having a price on carbon actually impacts, I love this figure, that it's the only policy that impacts 80% of greenhouse gases. The other 20% are things like making cement, where there's off-gassing in cement, and there's cows and methane coming out of cows. But I think that's a very important thing. So any other questions or thoughts on kind of those examples, or kind of how you kind of want to, basically how you want to put what we have, put what we're offering, the solution that we have, and who we are in the right bite-sized pieces that make sense to these executives, these individuals that we're talking to. Okay, and we can talk more about that. But so when you're putting together your companies, you're going to start thinking about the overall strategy, and kind of what the angle is that you want to take, what the leverage point is with these companies. And then it's okay, so how do you actually contact them? You may be familiar with these tools already, but there's a couple good websites out there, Rocket Reach and Viola Norbert, where you can get emails. Start either their website. If it's a bigger company, they'll have a website, and you can go. Even smaller companies typically have websites these days, and the smaller company, you'll be able to see about, and typically have the owner or who's the CEO or president of that company. If it's a bigger company, you can look and see who the kind of sustainability or government relations are. And then from there, you can take that info back and plug it into Rocket Reach or Veal and Norbert, or there's a couple other services. You can get a free account, and we have if we need to do more. Have their personal email, that's fantastic. Or you may be able to pick up the phone and talk to them, say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this, what I'm working on. But if it's a cold or a, where we actually haven't talked to the person before, then typically you'll start with an email. And I'll send you this link, but we have a nice kind of collection of emails. There's a nice here, what Bruce, one of our team members, calls a cool call instead of a cold call. And kind of walks you through the steps of kind of crafting that and how do you personalize an email. And typically, as I'm sure you guys are, our email boxes are full, and executives, don't have a ton of time. So they're kind of looking through quickly. So you want to see to make the subject matter line as catchy and relevant to them as possible. And then in terms of the email, kind of get to the point rather quickly. So concise is generally better. And you'll see in here, there's a few examples. And then if you go back here, you'll also see there's a whole folder. There's a couple of prospect emails here that we've used recently. And you'll see, there's a whole folder here of older kind of emails. Some of these are a little dated, but they'll give you kind of a general sense in terms of flow. And in terms of crafting an email, it's something we hope that you'll start on in the next week. It's something you can do with your team. You may have, kind of a general base email that you send introducing yourself. You can introduce yourself as a student. You're working, for the summer with BCL, and you're concerned about climate and want to engage them, and would like to set up a call. And you always want to find something to ask them to meet. Ask them for a few minutes of their time. And then from that base email, you can kind of customize that a little bit if you're sending it to a local restaurant versus a local brewer versus, a local, pharmacy or healthcare company. So, and typically it takes multiple times. Usually send an email out. Sometimes we'll make a phone follow-up. Sometimes, after a week or two, we'll send another email. And interestingly, I find if I send out an email and I'm looking at the news, they'll see something new that is interesting and kind of send that, just wanted to see if you saw this article and wanted to follow up on the email that I recently sent. And more than anything, it's to be patient, be polite, of course, and be persistent. So it's kind of, I've had instances, every once in a while, you'll get somebody who will respond after one email. It just happens to catch them at the right time, and they're looking for something to do. Companies are all about solutions. So they're looking, how do I get engaged in a way that's going to be a solution that hopefully is maybe not too much work for me, or a way that I can engage that's going to be helpful to me in my business. So we feel that we have ways that we can do that, but sometimes you'll just catch a person. Sometimes it'll take a couple different tries to get in contact with them. And sometimes you just keep trying and you don't hear from them, and then we'll try a little bit later. Okay. We touched on this a little bit last week, but just bringing that back in terms of, first is to kind of think about the companies that you want to talk to. Second is going to be to start to do a little bit of research, figure out who to contact in that company. Then it's to craft an email. And as you're kind of doing that, you're also trying to get more information on that company and on that sector. What is it that, whether it's articles, look to see anything that this individual has said about climate, any associations that they're involved in. You can look up, if you can find them on LinkedIn, to see, where they went to school, what they studied, just trying to find some sort of connection into where we can relate to them. And kind of mentioned last week as well, to kind of see what competitors are doing. It's interesting, in terms of brewers, we have a lot of breweries we're already talking to that are already supporting us. So it makes an easier kind of entree to say these other people in your industry that have the same concerns as you do, are supporting us and supporting our work. And there are some really good groups to look at. We're Still In is a group of companies, several thousand companies that have signed off in support of the Paris Accord. RE100 is a group of companies that support the 100% renewable series, is a sister or related organization or cousin, part of our family of organizations working on climate policy. They have a number of good companies. SBT is Science-Based Targets, and CDP is the Climate Disclosure Project. There are organizations out there that companies are part of. And if companies have already committed to lowering their carbon emissions, to supporting climate policy, it's an easier entree, as Mark was talking, in terms of us engaging with them.
By the way, if you have questions or you want to discuss any of these things during the week, Randy and I are generally available. Just send an email to both of us, and at least one of us will probably respond pretty quickly.
Yeah. So with that, we're going to, we've matched you up in the teams of 4. We're going to get you out there. We're going to we're going to break in a couple minutes to have you kind of go into your teams, be able to introduce yourself, get your each other's contact information, and plan a time to talk. And our thinking is that you'd meet, at least initially, try and set up a meeting once a week. It doesn't have to be long, just depending on how much work you guys want to spend together. And with the team, you'll probably be working independently, meaning you'll have companies that you're talking to, which are most likely around your geographic area. You may have some industries or a company here or there that you're sharing with somebody that, hey, let's approach this company. This is something that we're both interested in. That's great. But you're also see this as an opportunity. You have a team that you can say, hey, I don't know, how should I approach this company? Or what do you think the best thing to do? Or wow, what would be the concerns that they'd have? In addition to, as part of, we talked about what the rationale, what the positive impacts would be for them. There's also the negative impacts, kind of, it is going to increase, having a price is most likely going to increase some of their inputs. And how is that? How do we address those issues? Okay. And then the hope is that eventually we're going to be able to get some meetings with these companies, and your team will go with you. Your team can be a part of that discussion, and then depending, what company that is, it could be Mark or I or somebody else from Business Climate Leaders that we would join. Again, you guys can take on as much as you want, or have us on, and we can be behind the scenes, and you guys can lead it, or we can, kind of navigate that presentation together. And we'll be working over the next couple of weeks in terms of the other steps of getting more detailed into how we'd actually run a call and putting together a presentation, et cetera. So step by step. Mark?
Yeah, Randy, by the way, I was looking at the attendance from the first meeting and today's meeting, and we might want to combine teams 2 and 3 and teams 4 and 5.
Okay.
Because we've had some people dropped off. Yeah, so there's a lot of information here. I'm not going to go through it all. This basically just is to remind us that we're not the only ones who have plowed this ground before, or we may not be the only ones. And there may be others who are working with the same companies right now. So we want to be cognizant of that. So CCL has a paid staff, and some of them are talking to businesses. So we want to make sure we're all connected. So the first thing is on that second major bullet, make sure you know your local CCL chapter. You're probably a member already, but make sure you're linked in with them. If you have trouble finding them, we can help you with that. And talk to them. Maybe they have a grass tops outreach team. Probably not, but the leader, the chair of that chapter, talk to them, find out who they've already talked to, what businesses they've talked to in the area, so that you're not doing something that somebody's already done. For large companies and organizations, so we're talking about national size here. So for instance, I saw somebody had the American Red Cross, and I think there may have been a large insurance company. For those companies, let's make sure we inform the CCL staff, and we'll let you know how to do that. But the CCL staff also has connections with a lot of those national groups, and we don't want to tread on things that they've already been doing. And then I've got a list here of what defines a large company, generally what defines it. So it kind of gives you an idea of those that we should really coordinate with CCL staff. And then also, we want to make sure that we use the Grasstops engagement tracker. We talked a little bit about that last week. We'll make sure you have the Oh, and there you go. You'll have, when you have the slides, you'll have the link there. So take a look at whether there's already somebody that's been assigned to that company. That doesn't mean you can't talk to them. It just means that somebody at some time talked to them, and you probably should just check with them and see if they still have an active engagement. If not, then put your name down there as the delegate for that company once you've made contact with that company. So yeah, just a bit of a reminder about making sure that we stay coordinated with others who might be working in towards the same aims as us.
Great.
Randy?
So, yeah, last slide or two here. Just kind of the plan from now to next week is would love to have you each have a group of 10 companies. And I say 10, it could be 8, it could be 12, it could, but around that area I think is good. Too many, it gets a little crazy, too little, in terms of, we're hoping it does, you have to hit a few, get a few notes out there to get some connection. So as Mark mentioned, the Grass Tops engagement tracker, you want to just check that for those companies to see if anybody, if they're on there at all. And again, just in terms of developing those companies, if you haven't already, just think about places that people or where you shop or companies that you like or have interest in or would like to explore or get to know better. Schedule a meeting with your team. We'll kind of go into groups in a minute. And as part of that, start to work on developing a sample email. And again, I'll send you the links to where you can see the other sample emails. And as Mark mentioned, connect with your local CCL chapter and just make sure that you get to know them, they get to know you and what you're working on, and so that we're coordinating things. Okay. And just a couple quick reminders that you guys should all have signed up and be engaged in the summer advocacy training program already. Go through the training manual if you haven't already, and the CCL conference, which is going to be really good on this Saturday. So if you haven't registered for that already, please go ahead and do that. And then we'll be back here again, same time next week at 2 o'clock. So with that, I'm just going to open it up for questions on anything you guys have that we talked about or otherwise. And then we'll take some questions, and then we'll jump in the groups for a few minutes.
I have a question. It's like kind of specific to me, so I don't want to waste anyone else's time, but like I'm kind of unsure where I should, like which region I should be like looking for companies in, because like in general, I mean, I go to UCLA, so I'll be in LA, but like currently I'm living at home, but for the rest of the summer, I'll be in Lake Tahoe for another internship. So I'm like not sure where I should be looking for companies. Like, should I do it in Tahoe, like where I'll be, so I can like go in person, or,
So we're thinking that most of what we're going to be doing is going to be virtual. I mean, if you think that there's some good candidates in Tahoe, I mean, you can do both. You can do where you are now and Tahoe. It's always nice if you're going to have an opportunity to go in and talk to somebody personally. But that's really up to you. I will tell you, we've grouped you with the California folks, but it's a wide range of Northern California. So whatever works for you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely on the personal connection front, if you are up wherever you are, if it's, a brewery, for instance, say you want to talk to a restaurant, or, it's great if you can go in firsthand and show that you're a customer and, hey, I love this place and been coming here and I'm really passionate about climate. I wonder if that's something you're concerned about. If so, this is what I'm doing. I'd love to talk to you about this, or if you take a minute to look over this and see if you'd be open to talking at some point. So that's, the more personal you can make it rather than emails, or, the better. So
when looking at who to engage with, should we be looking towards, you mentioned like the CEO, is there someone else at the company that we should be focusing on, maybe finding the email of?
Yeah, so it's going to depend on the company. I mean, ultimately, if you can get the CEO, that's great. I mean, if you're talking about a restaurant, privately owned restaurant, something like that, usually I'll go in and I'll talk to the manager who's there, who probably is not the owner, and I'll ask if I can talk to the owner and what time the owner will be around, if I'm going to try to do an in-person one, or you know, or how can I contact the owner? Or the manager might be as far as you're going to get there. So again, it depends, but certainly, yeah, go up the chain and to the main decision maker.
And for bigger companies, it's typically the sustainability folks, and or it's usually and the government relations people. So it's, you know, working for bigger companies, you kind of have to work both sides of it. The people that are already get and are working on sustainability issues and concerned about climate, but then they need to get the policy people that are actually engaging with legislators to make it a priority. But smaller companies, as Mark said, don't have that infrastructure in place. So usually it's, you know, the owners, or could be even a communications person that sees it as valuable.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay. Well, why don't we do this? And I'm figuring out how to pop everybody into to groups here. So I will move you to a group, and well, Mark, I'm thinking I'm just going to stick with the groups because so that they can share emails and contacts.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll send out the list and emails to everybody.
Okay.
So at least
if you find that you have a particularly small group, we may end up combining.
Okay. I'm trying to see how I do this with keep my. So feel free to throw out any questions while I just set up breakout rooms here.
I will tell you while you're thinking, if you have any questions. I'm in the state of Virginia, and I'm working with our Grass Stops outreach team here. So we are doing a mass mailing to wineries in Virginia, and my personal experience is I've been to a few wineries in my time, but a few, and since they've reopened here, and when I go, it's just too busy. I've tried to spend some time with the manager, and it's like, yeah, I hear you, but you know, I've got 100 people here I got to deal with today. And then I went back on a weekday, hoping that it wasn't going to be busy, and the manager wasn't there. So, you know, those are kind of the practical things that you run into. But I did get the name of people. I will also tell you that I'm doing this with me and other retired fellow like myself, and then a college student who really came on to kind of manage our email and our database and to help us with some of that. And about the third meeting, he said, well, you know, I just realized one of our best friends is the owner of one of the biggest wineries here in Virginia. I said, really? You didn't tell us that before? He said, yeah, it didn't even occur to me. And there was nothing like getting our foot in the door that way, because trying to you know, get people to pay attention. Well, there's nothing better than having, you know, somebody call them up and said, you know, Mark Menzer is going to be calling you, you know, you should really listen to him. He's got a good message to tell. So if you do know somebody, even if it wasn't a business that you were thinking about targeting, but if you know somebody who's an orthodontist, because we're going after a healthcare industry or something like that, and they're willing to talk to a few friends, that always works. So wineries was one group we're going after. The other one we're going after in Virginia is the electric utility. And we have one major electric utility here. And we've, again, having problems getting our foot in the door. It turns out I was in a meeting, a CCL meeting, where another utility was speaking. And I've struck up a conversation with this guy on Zoom. And meanwhile, I'm looking at LinkedIn, and I see that he is first level friend with somebody in my utility. And I said to him, by the way, do you know this person? He says, oh yeah, I know them well. Well, can you get us a meeting? And that was the way we got in the door with this utility. We haven't made the sale there yet, but it's a process. It's taking a while. So, you know, take advantage of people you know, or friends of friends, LinkedIn people who might know other people in your area. A lot of resources like that available.
All right, I think I almost got it. Louise, where are you based?
Louise is out in Berkeley. She's our new volunteer.
Ah, that's Louise. Okay, fantastic.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm going to do this. Everybody, so the groups, so in most cases, there's at least 3 of you. The plan is to have 4 in each group. Some people aren't here right now. Fatu and Olivia are just 2 for kind of the Midwest area, but there's going to be 2 others. And Jill, who's Maine, right? There's going to be 4 East Coasters, but right now there's just you. So I'm just putting you in with our friends from Colorado just to say hi. So you get a chance to meet with them. Okay. So I'm going to put you in rooms for just 5 or 6 or 7 minutes. What I'd suggest is just I will send you emails, but you can exchange your emails if you like. And just why don't you figure out a time that or 2 that works for you guys to either, if you want to connect it via email to set up a time or set a date and a time to do a Zoom call so you can get to know each other briefly. And then I think that's it. Anything else, Mark?
No, we'll come back here for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, we'll come back here for a few minutes, whatever questions you have. All right.
Good.
Here we go.
See you soon. Good.
Okay. Hi, Louise. Is Louise there? There she is.
She's, yeah, can't hear you. All right, well, that was good. Yeah, we are going to have to do some combining, I think. I assume anybody who wasn't here for the first 2 sessions has decided not to do this.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, I think that's true. Let me see.
Well, except for, I'm Matthew. I'm sorry.
Matthew's
I
one,
think
right? So Matthew, we
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So yeah, the gentleman from Michigan has missed 2. Philadelphia missed 2. Burlington missed 2. Brandon, oh yeah, Reno missed 2.
Mhm.
Okay, Idaho. Yeah, I don't think any of those folks. Yeah, I don't think any of those folks said that they told me they weren't going to make it. So
Griffin, you're back.
I'm back. I am so sorry. I have a panel that I have
go.
to go sit on, so I have to go.
Oh,
but it was really
okay.
nice to meet you, and I really appreciate it. I gave my contact info to Allison, so hopefully she'll reach out soon.
Awesome. And Griffin, so you're in Colorado now? You're not in Emory, but you're doing an Emory call right now.
Yes, yeah. So
Okay.
I'm like a tour guide there, and so they have
Yeah.
us do like these prospective student calls, and so I have to go do whatever that is.
All right. Well, go Nuggets, and great to see
Go
you,
Nuggets.
Griffin.
There we go.
All
All right,
right,
nice
see ya.
meeting you. I'll see you guys
You
next
got
week.
it.
Bye-bye.
So Louise, are you still there? You still there with us? We cannot hear you. We can see you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. All right. So you realize this is our intern class, right?